look at the surface of this dial under a loupe, it is a staggering landscape. Thousands of tiny, flat-topped pyramids, separated by microscopic diamond-shaped grooves that catch the light like woven silk. You are looking at the tapestry dial of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. But the man who designed the watch didn't invent this pattern. The company that sold the watch didn't name it. By looking closely at the true, unmonetized history of this single square inch of metal, we can see exactly how the modern luxury watch industry actually operates. In the early 1970s, the traditional Swiss mechanical watch industry was facing the quartz crisis. Cheap, highly accurate, battery-powered electronic watches were flooding the market, threatening to make centuries of mechanical engineering obsolete. Facing severe financial pressure, Audemars Piguet's managing director, Georges Collet, called a young designer named Cheryl Genta.
The mandate was brutal. Draw an entirely new kind of high-end steel sports watch and have the sketch ready by the next morning. Genta delivered. Drawing inspiration from the bolted metal collars of traditional divers' helmets, he designed the 1972 Royal Oak. It featured a stark octagonal bezel secured by 8 visible, functional hexagonal screws. Releasing this in steel was a massive risk. Machining stainless steel to Genta's exacting, sharp-angled specifications was incredibly difficult and expensive. Because of those manufacturing costs, this steel watch hit the market priced higher than many solid gold watches of the era. The aggressive steel case created an entirely new category of luxury sports watches. But to justify that astronomical price tag, that wide, open, expansive dial needed a texture complex enough to communicate instant value. The pattern they used didn't come from a secret Audemars Piguet vault, and Genta didn't draw it. It came from a third-party Geneva dial maker called Stern. Stern had recently taken possession of several old, complex engine-turning machines. The head of their design department, Roland Tilley, experimented with the machinery and discovered a particular geometric motif among hundreds of inherited pattern templates. Because the dense, intersecting cuts played with light similarly to woven threads, Tilley named the pattern Tapisserie, the French word for tapestry. When Genta visited Stern looking for a dial to fit his radical new watch, Tilley showed him the Tapisserie. Genta recognized that this accidental, highly textured geometry was the exact visual counterpoint his stark industrial steel case needed. Physically, the dial sits entirely separate from the heavy steel housing and the mechanical movement below it. It is a thin, flat plate of brass. Turning that flat brass into the tapisserie requires a combination of guilloche, the practice of cutting precise geometric patterns into metal on a lathe, and pantography, a mechanical system where a stylus traces a master pattern and scales it down onto the dial. There is a persistent myth of a lone, ancient artisan hand-cranking a wooden rose engine to carve each modern dial. In reality, this is machine-assisted guilloche. It is a highly skilled, painstaking craft, but it is performed on complex, operator-guided industrial copying machines. Once the grid is cut, it has to be colored. You cannot paint it. Standard watch paint would pool in the thousands of microscopic grooves, burying the texture. Instead, the brass is colored through electroplating, a galvanic chemical bath that deposits a microscopically thin layer of color while leaving every cut completely crisp. The dial works because of extreme technical precision. It is the result of mechanized geometric cutting paired with strict chemical plating, rather than old-world hand painting. This graphic illustrates the pattern's evolution. Left is the Petite tapestry, the fine original from 1972. Right is the 1999 Grande Tapestry, with bolder squares. Finally, the Mega tapestry, launched in 2001, is reserved for oversized Royal Oak offshore models. But the Mega tapestry breaks the manufacturing rule. Unlike the Petite and the Grande, the Mega pattern is not cut into the metal on a guilloche machine. It is created using a heavy stamping press. For collectors, identifying these 3 sizes at a glance immediately decodes the watch. It tells you the rough era of production, the specific model family, and exactly how that piece of metal was manufactured. The most sought-after iteration remains the original 1972 reference 5402, nicknamed the Jumbo. It measured a large 39 millimeters across, but sat an astonishingly thin 7 millimeters off the wrist. Getting a consistent blue color in a galvanic electroplating bath is notoriously difficult, sensitive to tiny shifts in temperature or timing. Because of this, surviving dials from the 1970s exhibit distinct, highly localized color fading and shifting. Today, those subtle chemical variations in the Petite tapestry are exactly what vintage experts look for. An honest, slightly uneven fade is a fingerprint of authenticity, while a suspiciously perfect, uniformly colored blue dial on a 1970s watch is often a flag for a modern service replacement. Counterfeiters can easily copy an octagonal piece of steel, but replicating an electroplated chemical bath perfectly layered over a machine-cut microscopic brass grid is an industrial hurdle that keeps fake vintage dials from passing rigorous inspection. The most famous dial texture in watchmaking was an inherited accident, found on a batch of old machines by a third-party vendor, yet it endures because it masters contrast. From across a room, the Royal Oak is an austere piece of industrial steel, but up close, the dial reveals a shimmering, incredibly dense landscape of geometric precision. It rewards the viewer for looking closer. The Royal Oak succeeds because it pairs a bold, aggressive silhouette with the obsessive, honest execution of a microscopic detail. So, which execution gets your vote? The delicate Petite tapestry or the bolder Grande? Let us know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the realities of watchmaking history, hit subscribe to join us for the next one. Keep winding.